Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Can Mayonnaise Kill a Jedi podcast. I am your co-host, Darth Salim.
And I am your main host, the Artificial Dragon, and welcome to the 64th episode of the podcast, everybody. Just double checking to see if I got the number correctly. Yes, I do. This is the 64th episode of our Can Mayonnaise Kill a Jedi podcast. We're a little ways...
Once we reach 100, we're gonna stop counting.
You know, that's gonna be very, very fair. But speaking of 100, Hannah, just recently we reached 800 subscribers.
Hell yeah.
Well, 805 now, but everybody gets the point.
But yes, we reached 800 subscribers.
Yeah, we are 195 subscribers away from getting 1K subscribers, Hannah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm super duper excited too. I wonder what our 1000K special should be.
Well, we'll have to brainstorm that and listen to what our Patreon and our Discord server says.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry to disappoint everybody, but me and Hannah are not going to eat a jar of mayonnaise as a 1K celebration.
No, I'd rather not die of high cholesterol.
There's many ways to kill a Jedi, and I don't want to be one of those victims.
Besides, I'm a Sith. That's not how you kill Sith.
How would you kill a Sith, Hannah?
I think there are a lot of ways to kill a Sith.
Yeah, that's fair. I just remembered Darth Sion. Just tell him to calm the fuck down. That'll stop him.
That was funny. Anyway, Isaac.
Yeah, we'll eventually talk about Darth Sion one of these days, but that is not one of those days. But anyway, before we got off on our tangent, I'll get a couple of neat things out of the way. As per usual, everybody, the Discord is open for everybody to join, not just Patreon exclusive. But however, this upcoming episode is a Patreon voted special. So if you want your particular topic or character to be for us to cover in the near future, you could go to our Patreon. In the highest to second highest tier, you could get special voting rights, and we'll be able to do the subject that you want me and Hannah to cover. Don't expect the Mandalorians anytime soon, because they're popular enough already as it is.
We'll cover them eventually, just not at least within the year.
Yeah, not within this year anyway, or in this lifetime, if I'm going to be completely honest.
Oh, come on.
I know, I'm just teasing there, Hannah, but joking aside, if you love the content that we made, you could donate to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/canmayo. Once again, that's patreon.com/canmayo, where you could contribute to any amount and you'll have special rights. The two highest tiers, you'll have special voting rights for a future topic episode. And as per usual, you will have access to all of our exclusive Patreon art pieces. And I know at the time of his recording it's not exactly complete, but I'm trying out a new artist. And this month, a little bit late by the way, we have a revamped Night Sister. She looks good, doesn't she, Hannah?
I love the way that looks.
Yeah, it looks so cool.
She looks fucking awesome. The art is actually really good with that too.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, she looks seductive and scary at the same time with that smug grin she has.
Love it.
But yeah, I'm trying out a new artist. They're doing a pretty good job, by the way, and I hope everybody else is loving this too once it gets published along with this episode. But yeah, go to the highest tier, download a full resolution of the Night Sister, and I don't know, put it as your phone background or plaster it on your wall as a full body poster, something like that.
Yep, I've still got Valkorion as my lock screen and Dooku as my home screen.
Yep, you are embodying that simp card meme that we've made a couple weeks ago, Hannah.
Yep, I love that sticker.
Yeah, it's so good. That and the suicidal Father Jar Jar is really good.
Oh yeah, and of course, Togruta Simp.
Yep, to Garuda Simp. But yeah, that too. But yeah, Patreon art piece, go ahead and download, contribute as much as you can. We always appreciate the love and support. And speaking of love and support, let me do a shout out to our highest tier Patreons and our most loyal followers. Give me a minute here. Special thanks to Y Wolves, Cameron Lee, Dr. Emboss, Gomez, and Tristan H. Thank you, everybody, so much for supporting us for this particular year. And I'm hoping to gain more followers in the coming months.
Hell yeah. Hey,
And
maybe we can reach maybe we can reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year.
that would be awesome, Hannah. That would be a dream come true.
Yeah,
But
that'd be pretty cool.
yeah, and last but not least, shout out to Hannah's blog.
Yes. Thank you.
I know I haven't been throwing any questions for you, Hannah, but real life stuff is always a pain in the ass. I just got my apartment reorganized, so I'll probably get around to sending you a question or two.
Fair enough. Hell, the last question I got, which was from you, was sent on March 12th, and I still have not answered it.
I know we're a little bit behind on several things, Hannah. Fortunately, not a lot of podcast episodes we're behind on.
Mm.
But anyway, with that out of the way, Hannah, this is once again a Patreon-sponsored episode from our good old buddy, Y Wolves, or if you ever go to the Discord server.
It's not sponsored. We don't have a sponsor.
Well, you know what I mean, Hannah.
Patreon chosen.
Yeah, Patreon chosen episode. Specifically, Y Wolves, aka Warlord Lover.
And no, this is not an Imperial Warlord episode.
We'll eventually get there, but this episode is very important lead up to the Imperial Warlords episode, which we will eventually get around to doing, don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, point is, we'll be covering one of the most famous, most popular antagonist faction in all of Star Wars. They're the granddaddy of all antagonist factions in all of sci-fi, in all fairness. The Galactic Empire.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we're finally covering a faction from the original trilogy. It feels like forever since we finally covered the original trilogy.
Speaking of which, I need to actually use my Disney Plus subscription to watch the original trilogy.
Yeah, we've only watched the prequel trilogy together on Disney Plus. Never. Did we watch New Hope together? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
But yeah, we need to catch up on a lot of old Star Wars films. I mean, we did the holiday special, but let's forget about that for just a couple of minutes at least.
Which you need to edit so everyone can see it again.
And another thing that we're falling behind on, Hannah.
Anyway, Galactic Empire.
Yes, we will be covering the Galactic Empire. Like I said before, it's basically the most influential big bad evil faction in all of Star Wars. Like, it's your classical evil space dictatorship. And we all know what the inspiration for the Galactic Empire comes from.
I don't. What is it?
The Nazis.
Oh, right. I remember seeing that within the First Order, but not with the Empire. But that's
well, I mean, yeah, that it's the imagery of a Nazism is very prevalent with the First Order and all that, but the Galactic Empire is pretty much on the nose. Like, their literal soldiers are called stormtroopers, which are prominent German soldiers from World War I believe.
Yep.
And of course, we got the Inquisition, very in line with the Gestapo, I believe. No, not that's Soviets.
And the Spanish Inquisition.
The Spanish Inquisition.
The Gestapo was Nazis.
Yeah. Okay. I doubted myself for a second there. Yeah, very obvious Nazi vibes with a Galactic Empire, and of course George Lucas, when he was making Star Wars, I'm just going to throw this out there. Star Wars is a satire. Many things are supposed to be overly exaggerated, and the Empire in the original trilogy is so cartoonishly evil. Like, how can a force like that even exist in the real world? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But
it happened.
Yeah, it happened. But yeah, like, we'll go through the deep intricacies of a Galactic Empire and why it is such a significant force in the galaxy. But yeah, like, I remember watching a Getsy's, no, not a Getsy's, Generation Tech, which is another Star Wars YouTuber, who always does a lot of memes of the original. From what I remember, the original trilogy is memed to be a Rebel Alliance propaganda, basically picturing the Galactic Empire as this evil, unapologetically evil force, of a Rebel Alliance as the good guys who could do no wrong, sort of thing.
Yep.
But it was made like that for a reason, because George Lucas, he was born in a generation where Vietnam happened recently, that sort of generation. And the creation of Star Wars was meant to be a satire of what was going on at the time.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Hell, even the Vietnam War wasn't even really, from what I remember, it wasn't really like built up to be, we're going to help and everything.
Yeah.
Hell, Vietnam vets were looked down on when they came back.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing. But it's kind of important to remember that sort of context with the relation of a Galactic Empire, why it's portrayed as so cartoonishly evil.
Fair enough. Hell, I found out just, what was it, yesterday or 2 days ago, my biological grandfather served about 3 years in Vietnam.
Yeah. Was he like in the army or the Marines or something?
He was in the army.
Okay.
If only I knew more, but apparently all that died with him. Good riddance.
Yeah. Well,
he was a shit person, so don't feel bad.
Okay, no worries. Where was I going with this? Okay, so it's kind of important to go with the real world context of the Empire, because back then they were so cartoonishly evil. But nowadays, we get a lot more lore, and, with the developing times, we kind of humanize the Empire a lot more. I think I heard this term somewhere, where a modern Star Wars writer approached the Timothy Zahn approach, which is humanizing evil guys, like Grand Admiral Thrawn, for example. And the Galactic Empire a lot of people like to joke that people prefer the black and white era of the original trilogy instead of the gray versus gray of the prequel trilogy, which is the generation you and I come from. But I just think it's really fascinating to get into the deep intricacies of why the Galactic Empire, why people follow the Galactic Empire. There's all these nuances and all that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't mean to go off topic, but it is very important for this type of discussion. I was having a conversation with Warlord Lover, and why would anybody follow the Super Earth government, which is the main faction within
Holy hell. Hang on.
Oh, God.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, why would anybody want to follow Super Earth when they propagate democracy, but all the stuff they convey is so undemocratic, that sort of thing. I think it's important to understand the out of universe thing, because a lot of franchises, they have such evil factions. Like, we always like to meme that we love following the evil people because they are way more interesting than the good guys, in all honesty.
Well, yeah. Villains are just better written.
Yeah, like, you have gone on record saying you're a Sith Empire simp.
Hell yeah.
And they are so unapologetically, cartoonishly evil that, yeah. But it's just that, like I mentioned before, Star Wars and Helldivers is a satire. It's obviously meant to be exaggerated to grab our attention and everything. And there's the saying, like, you can't see the forest for the trees. You can't absorb the smaller details when you're missing the point of a larger picture, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the uncompromising community that has gone with Helldivers too, especially with the place with Sony limiting. That's a whole can of worms, but I swear to God, the Helldivers 2 community is probably the most balls to the wall community out there right now.
As I've heard.
Yeah, but yeah, that's an entire can of worms, which isn't related to Star Wars, but I thought I'd throw that allegory out there for you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, while we, okay, I already did the out-of-universe explanation of the Empire and its intricacies. Let me actually go into its in-universe lore, the very important stuff that everybody watches these videos for.
Yep.
But anyway, okay, here, funny enough, and I say that, but fittingly enough, the Empire has a great amount of quotes that I will be using throughout the entirety of this video for you.
Okay.
You probably might recognize parts of his speech from Revenge of the Sith when Palpatine makes his declaration to the Senate and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, here is one part of that speech from the novelization of Revenge of the Sith. We are an empire ruled by the majority. An empire ruled by a new constitution. An empire of laws, not of politicians. An empire devoted to the preservation of a just society. Of a safe and secure society. We are an empire that will stand for 10,000 years.
Guess what? It did do that.
It barely lasted 20 years. Yes, I know. That aside, it just gives you a great example of of what Palpatine envisioned the Empire to be. Obviously, it wasn't going to last for 10,000 years, let alone a couple of decades, but it's got that gravitas feeling sort of to it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so the Galactic Empire is described as a humocentric, authoritarian authority that replaced the Galactic Republic when, obviously, Palpatine declared himself the Emperor of a New Order. It goes by several names, such as the First Galactic Empire, or simply the Empire, or later in history, it would be called the Old Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we'll go into its history, there's actually like several miniature factions of the Empire that kind of branch out. Like, of course, the Imperial Remnant led by Pelion.
Yep.
But anyway, so as we know from the prequel trilogies, watch the entirety of the prequel trilogies for that, by the way, the Galactic Empire would be the scheming aspirations of Darth Sidious, which was in lore inspired by the Sith Empire led by Darth Vitiate.
Yep.
Like, if Okay, going back to the Book of the Sith again. It's been a while since I referenced that. Holy shit. There's like a certain section where Palpatine is exploring ancient Sith empires, and he looked at Darth Vitiate's Sith empire, and he's like, I'm going to base my entire empire off of Vitiate's.
And yet you have the balls to call him Xerox Palpatine. No, Palpatine is Xerox Vitiate, and I will stand by that.
Okay, in lore, yes, that is definitely true, but out of lore, it is the opposite, Hannah.
Either way.
But anyway, where was I? Okay. Through numerous machinations that place Palpatine into a high position, like emergency powers given to him throughout the Clone Wars, and then enacting the big one, which is Order 66, enacting the Great Jedi Purge, it assured Palpatine's ascension as the Emperor of the Galaxy, and created the foundations of a galactic empire. Then he would make the declaration of a new order before the Senate, which was, in Padme's word, met with thunderous applause.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would talk about the entirety of a speech, but it is too long for me to cover in this episode. Watch a separate video if you want to listen to the full speech, because it is so long. It is not, I'm not even kidding. But generally, Palpatine's declaration of a new order was kind of met with mixed opinions by the entirety of a Galactic Senate. A majority of senators actually approved of Palpatine's speech, because this meant a future with no more senseless war, as the entirety of the Clone Wars had shown to them. Because it's kind of that idea of freedom versus security. And obviously, they want more security than more freedom at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And on the opposite side, as as Padme showed, they personally disagreed with the majority of the speech, but ultimately, they kind of stayed silent because there were a bunch of armed guards ready to execute anybody that spoke out against Palpatine.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but the point is, though it was heavily implied for the speech anyway, that the beginnings of the Empire would be done on behalf of the people of the galaxy to ensure that peace is secured through united and overwhelming might.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we covered in the previous episodes, like with the Trade Federation and the Separatist Alliance, there's a lot of nuances, like the mega corporations, all of these alien races trying to make their own ideals and spread them throughout the galaxy, and it kind of destabilized peace for a majority of citizens within the Republic. And of course, there's more to it than that, but a lot of people personally blame the aliens and all of that for being responsible for bringing so much death and destruction across the galaxy. Of course, they would accept the declaration of a new order too.
Oof, that sounds very Holocausty.
Well, as we'll get more into the Empire's lore, we'll cover that, but it's a different time in the era of a Star Wars galaxy.
I know, but still, that is exactly, the Jews were blamed for the war, and the aliens were blamed for the war.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the Nazi resemblance more and more as we talk about the Galactic Empire.
Yep.
But anyway, I will give you part of a speech just to give you the nuances of the Empire and all that. It'll be a little bit long, so bear with me for a little bit, Hannah.
Okay.
I'll be tapping into my inner Palpatine for this, so... We have taken on a task that will be difficult, but the people of the Empire are ready for the challenge. Because of our efforts, the galaxy has traded war for peace and anarchy for stability. Billions of beings now look forward to a secure future. The Empire will grow as more planets feel the call, from the rim to the wilds of unknown space. Imperial citizens must do their part, join our grand Starfleet, become the eyes of the Empire by reporting suspected insurgents, travel to the corners of the galaxy to spread the principles of a new order to barbarians, build monuments and technical wonders that will speak of our glory for generations to come. The clone troopers, now proudly wearing the name of Imperial Stormtroopers, have tackled the dangerous work of fighting our enemies on the front lines. Many have died in their devotion to the Empire. Imperial citizens would do well to remember their example. The new order of peace has triumphed over the shadowy secrecy of shameful magicians. The direction of our course is clear. I will lead the Empire to glories beyond imagining. We have been tested, but we have emerged stronger. We move forward as one people, the Imperial citizens of the first Galactic Empire. We will prevail. 10,000 years of peace begins today.
Is that it?
That's part of a speech. If I go on any further, we'll be here all day, Hannah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's one thing you gotta admit about Palpatine is that he's got some kick-ass speeches.
Yeah. Well, he is a politician, so.
Yeah, I especially, I'm not sure if you watch The Bad Batch, but I do love when he makes an appearance and he makes his speech about reorganizing the clone troopers into the Imperial Stormtroopers.
I have not watched The Bad Batch yet, but we'll get to it.
I particularly love that scene because at the same time, it shows Palpatine's manipulation as this caring politician, but at the same time, he kind of reforms the argument and pushes forward his own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, me sucking Darth Raisin's dick aside, but yeah, for the beginning of the Empire's history, a majority of the galaxy embraced the new regime because 3 years of war had torn the galaxy asunder. And it made the transition relatively smooth for Palpatine, as he had hoped. Many institutions founded under the Republic, however, would be dismantled or modified beyond recognition. The only visible element of the Old Republic was the Imperial Senate, which was essentially left as the legislative body of the Empire. But in reality, it had little power over the conduct of the Empire.
Yep, Palpatine made all the decisions.
Yeah.
The Senate was just there to be like, hey, we still have the Senate. No, we don't.
Yeah, it was basically meant to keep up the illusion that the people still had a voice, when in reality they were just there.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've never watched the Andor series, but that's very prominent whenever you go to scenes surrounding Mon Mothma, and she's trying to do all these political discussions, but barely anybody is participating in them, just leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the Imperial Senate was active all the way up until New Hope. Eventually you'll get around to watching it, but in that particular scene where the Moths and Tarkin meet up at the Death Star, the Emperor, it's been described that Palpatine basically dissolved the Imperial Senate now that the Death Star is operational. They could keep the other worlds in line that way.
Mm-hmm.
Which did not work at all.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, just a little bit of background with the Imperial Senate. Ultimately, the Imperial Senate kind of served as an advisory body to the Emperor, like giving him suggestions and everything like that. I believe they still had some control over the laws, like they banned certain weapons, but ultimately it was Palpatine that had the final say.
Well, yeah, of course. That's what a dictator is.
Yeah, but all in all, Palpatine kind of listened to their suggestions, probably because he knew that if he pretty much ignored all of them, then they would probably join the rebellion instead of staying with the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Which does make sense, but yeah, they had very little power in general. Let me see. Where was I? The ruling constitution of the Empire would be what is called the Imperial Charter, which replaced the previous Galactic Constitution of a Republic. And while it still had held similar laws as the Republic, it basically stripped away certain laws and instituted new ones, such as it stripped away the rights of sentience, which basically took away all rights for alien citizens within the Galactic Empire.
Okay.
And it most importantly legalized slavery. Very, very obvious.
Even though slavery was still a thing in the time of the Galactic Republic.
Well, technically it's
But it was,
outlawed.
quote, illegal. But all of Ryloth could still be enslaved. Where the
Yeah.
fucking double standard there just pisses me off so much.
Oh man, but there's still some laws in place about the treatment of aliens, because when Leia Organa served as a senator of Aldran within the Imperial Senate, she pointed out that the use of energy weapons on some primitive races was considered a gross violation of the Imperial Charter. But eventually down the line, she acknowledged at that point that the Empire was unconcerned with maintaining such appearances.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Among other things, there were organizations within the Republic that would be reorganized, such as the Grand Army of the Republic would be transformed into the Imperial Army. The clone troopers themselves would be reorganized into the Stormtrooper Corps, the Republic Navy, the Imperial Navy, and the 4 intelligence agencies of the Republic would be combined and reformed into the Imperial Intelligence. And
Palpatine really just copy and pasted everything from Vitiate's Empire, didn't he?
Well, not everything. I mean, granted, there's a shit ton of organizations within the Empire that I won't even mention in this episode because holy shit. But there are a lot. I don't know if there are spheres of influence within the Galactic Empire. At least as far as I know, but I wouldn't doubt it.
Mm-hmm.
But let me see. But of course, we have the use of moths as a military title within the Galactic Empire, very similar to the Sith Empire and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But as we covered in the previous Separatists and Trade Federations episode, there are several organizations that were imperialized by the Empire. But most of them, like the banking clan, are pretty much left in power because of how important they are to the galactic economy. But other companies like the Trade Federation, the Techno Union, Conference Guild, they were absorbed into the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
But only a couple of companies were left as independent bodies, but they would be under heavy imperial scrutiny. Just, Big Brother watching your shoulder like, hey, you work for us, and if you do anything treasonous, we'll know about it.
Very Orwellian in that regard.
Yeah. And some of these companies that would serve under the Empire, let me see if I could find them. Okay, I'll get to them later. And of course, the Moths were a very important power base for the Empire, as they essentially served as regional governors within entire oversectors. Like we had talked about briefly in the Galactic Senate episode, where each senator represents a sector, like Padme with the Chamo sector,
Yep.
Bail Organa with the Alderaan sector, and Orn Free with Rylov, so on and so forth. The Moths pretty much had the same authority as senators, but more. They ruled more than one star system over sectors, if you will.
They're basically governors.
Pretty much. Imperial governors. Like, I believe, I don't remember what section Grand Moff Tarkin ruled over, but he has, like, the largest territory compared to the other Moths within the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like, Grand Admirals, they rule over entire fleets. I mean, they technically have territory, but the important thing is they rule multiple fleets all at the same time.
Yep.
And then, let me see. Ironically enough, despite Palpatine reforming the Empire as a more secure power base, through the Moths, it would ironically make them a less, what's the word I'm looking for? It would be less decentralized because you have several individual Moths who are, what's the word I'm looking for? Who are ruling. They're basically miniature dictators in their own right, and they are all answerable to Palpatine himself.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is very ironic, considering that the Empire was meant to unite the galaxy, yet you have multiple, essentially glorified warlords ruling over their own sections of the galaxy. But in the early years of the Empire, Palpatine would launch multiple campaigns into the mid and outer rims to reconquer territory and as a quote-unquote fight back against the separatist boogeymen. If I remember in canon, there are like multiple stories where there's this backwater planet that had an important resource on it. And they're like, hey, Empire, we appreciate you bringing security to the galaxy, but let us rule by our lonesome, okay? And then some terrorist act happens, and the Empire comes in like, oh, there's a bunch of separatist terrorists, let's come in and take over this planet for your own protection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know, the classic big hero stunt. But let's see. Basically, the entirety of the Galactic Empire was one massive war machine, and the reason why they had to conquer so many planets was because Palpatine needed resources to continue building this war machine of numerous troopers, star destroyers, all that sort of stuff. And even though it was very popular amongst the more military-oriented minds of former personnel of the Republic, there are still some old Republic holdouts that didn't approve of Palpatine's administration on imperialization. Like, there are most concerns about the Emperor's warmongering, which would lead to even more lives being killed, more than the Clone Wars ever did. Like, there are some prominent examples of Imperial individuals, because in the early years of the Galactic Empire, there were numerous mutinies of Imperial officers trying to dethrone Palpatine and take rule for themselves because they think he's a shitty leader.
That's surprising that anyone would have the balls to do that.
Yeah, like, there's this one guy. His name is Gintis, and he's basically the headmaster of the Imperial Academy. Basically, his entire reason for trying to cause a mutiny against Palpatine was because he saw so many of his cadets just going out into this needless campaign in the Outer Rim, including one of his own sons.
Okay.
And basically, here's a picture of him, by the way.
Hell of a mullet he's got.
Basically, he unleashed a bioweapon on Coruscant itself to try and kill Palpatine.
Damn.
But obviously, he failed. And you want to know what Palpatine did to him?
Killed him.
Here's an image of what exactly happened.
Of course, good old Force lightning.
Yeah, he just grilling his ass right there. Of course, this is a more extreme example. There are like other individual Imperial commanders that were much more disgruntled, but they were much more subtle about it. Like in a canon novelization, let me see if I can find them real quickly. There is this individual named Pelibeo. He's a commandant aboard this Republic vessel turned Imperial vessel called the Defiance, and this guy has extreme balls of steel. Here's him standing up to Darth Vader.
If you could stand up to Darth Vader, yeah, you got balls of steel.
Yeah, there's an entire story where Palpatine was on board his ship because he's going to some world to convene with the highest minds of the Imperial Army to reorganize it and everything. And Balio was basically a trainer for future navigational officers. And Vader and Palpatine were on board his ship, the Defiance. And he kind of subtly changed the hyperspace coordinates on his ship. And his hope was to send the ship into a nearby star, killing everybody on board.
So he was willing to kill himself just to kill Palpatine and Vader.
Yep. And his entire, all of his students as well.
Oof.
Yeah, because in his words, he was all like, you're gonna brainwash them anyway, so I'm gonna save them from a life worse than death.
I mean, fair, but that's not the right way to go about it.
I know, but fortunately, Darth Vader, being, the best freaking star pilot in the galaxy, kind of noticed this detail and changed it before they actually yeeted themselves into a star.
Mm-hmm.
And then he confronted him in front of Palpatine, and Palpatine applauded Vader for his efforts, but Balio, he was enraged, and he was all like, no, I will not allow you guys to transform the glory of a republic into a dictatorship. And Palpatine was pretty much amused by this, and he wanted to keep him alive, allow the Commandant to slowly see his beloved republic transform into something that he absolutely hated.
Mm-hmm.
But Darth Vader, he was like, you know what, fuck this. Use the Force to snap the man's neck right then and there.
Of course, that's his fucking go-to.
And Palpatine was kind of pissed off at Vader because he thought that the Commandant would have been a useful tool to direct his rage at the enemies of the Empire, but he was like, whatever, what's done is done. And then afterwards, he goes up to a cadet and he's all like, oh, by the way, this ship, the Defiance, it probably needs to go to the scrapyard and transform into a bunch of cafeteria plates.
Mm-hmm.
As a huge salt to the wound to this former commandant. But yeah, I think that's a very nice story, that there are still loyalist elements of a republic that are like very disgruntled towards the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, well, let me go ahead and talk about the inner power base of the Empire and who rules what. Obviously, we know the big honcho is Emperor Palpatine himself. And below him is Grand Vizier, which is basically the position that Masameda took.
I remember that.
Yep. And below the Grand Vizier is the Supreme Commander of the Imperial Military, which is obviously Darth Vader himself.
Okay.
Like, he's, yeah, going back to Vitiate again, he's pretty much the Darth Malgus of his empire.
Well, basically, Malgus was kind of inspired by Vader. Fuck, their helmets are basically the same.
Essentially, yeah.
Malgus doesn't have his fucking whole face covered.
One distinct difference between them, and motherfucking Malgus can actually use Force Lightning while Vader can't.
Yeah, that's broken though, so.
Yeah. But of course, there are so many other ranking structures, I'll probably explore them in a later episode, but the Empire as a government is authoritarian, if it wasn't apparent from the entire episode. It had little to no freedom of speech, and any acts of dissidence were punished harshly, which according to the official field manual for the Empire's military, it was basically an aim to celebrate one ruler, one code of law, one common language, and one education and social progress, and wanted to ensure unity throughout the galaxy. Okay. So yeah, very, very similar to what Adolf Hitler wanted for the Germans and, the Third Reich and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Except Hitler went further by promoting the Aryan race.
Yeah, I don't think Palpatine promoted any specific race. Well, unless you count humanity, but that's its own thing.
That's not eugenics.
No, it is not.
Yeah.
But the executive branch of the Empire consisted of the Imperial Ruling Council, which is a group of Imperial advisors who run the day-to-day operations of the Emperor himself. So they're basically his personal advisors and the people who actually run the government. Think of a Dark Council.
Yep.
Let me see. Then there's the legislative branch, which is the Imperial Senate, but when it was dissolved by the Emperor, it would be replaced by several organizations, such as the Central Committee of Grand Moffs, and then eventually the Eternal Ruling Council, and finally the Council of Moffs.
I remember the Council of Moffs being mentioned, somewhere. I think it was Inspector of the Past.
Yeah. But yeah, the Council of Moffs, it's probably another aspect of the Empire that has endured throughout the millennia. Well, aside from the Emperor himself, but yeah, it's very prevalent in future galactic empires. We'll eventually explore other iterations of the Galactic Empire, but yeah, there's a lot of things that are still prevalent in the future of the Empire. But anyway, the Galactic Empire, for how big it is, has a very diverse economy, where it saw increased state control and centralization of economic goods to the point where inflation is basically non-existent.
Wow.
So yeah, no price increases anywhere in the Empire.
Well, at least that's one reason why I like the Empire.
Especially nowadays.
Today.
Yeah, inflation is bullshit.
Yes, it is. Hell, my groceries were $102 today.
Jesus Christ.
Yep.
Well, real life aside, and back into the authoritarian sci-fi faction. But yeah, like I mentioned before, there are many companies that were imperialized by the Empire, but mostly ones loyal to the Empire would remain, such as Kuat Drive Yards, Siona Systems, Tej Co, and Mirsan. You probably remember Tej Co from the Dark Troopers episode?
Barely, but okay.
But yeah, a lot of these companies are really important. Like Kuat are basically the people that create the Star Destroyers for the Empire.
Okay.
And then Siana, they created the TIE Fighter, and Mursan created their blasters. So a lot of arms dealing going around over here.
Mm-hmm.
But let's see. Even though the Empire ruled most of the galaxy, there is one section of space that they didn't rule, which is a section of space called the corporate sector. Do you recall the corporate sector at all?
Barely.
Okay, long story short, it's a section of the galaxy that's ruled over by numerous corporations.
Okay.
But anyway, the corporate sector, it's basically one of the few places in the galaxy that will remain neutral and independent from the Empire, so long as they contribute some of their gross product to the Empire, so basically taking taxes out of their pockets.
Just like the IRS does.
Just like the IRS. Good old economics. But anyway, aside from that though, the very few critics that exist within the Empire that would dare point out the flaws in the Empire, they would basically be heavily suppressed and would be punished to the point where slavery is an accepted form of punishment.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, anybody, even a human, could be punished and sent into slavery for the Empire.
Oof.
Yeah, so, hey. No, I'm not gonna go there, but anyway. Let's see. For all of its flaws, let's see. It pretty much the Empire would take over all commerce in the galaxy, where citizens of the Outer Rim would essentially be reduced from people to tenants, slaving for the Empire on its day-to-day basis. And then, let's see. Okay. And the main political ideology for the Empire is human centralization, which is, as we recall in several episodes, is basically human best thing in the galaxy, everybody else inferior.
Yep.
As we dived heavily into the Pius Dia Crusade, which is a very popular episode right now. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you go watch it. But anyway, human centralism, or as we all know it, it's called human high culture, would see humanity as the superior race in the galaxy. As we all know, the Empire has committed many atrocities against non-humans across the galaxy. And this is the part where we go to the concentration camps, Anna. Most non-humans within the Empire would be forced into what is called ethnic neighborhoods.
Ghettos.
Which were designated as alien protection zoos.
Literally ghettos.
Pretty much. And just like ghettos.
That's what they did with the Jews in World War II.
Yeah, but instead, just a lot of alien races just crumpled up into one area.
It's the same thing.
Now, aside from that, even though the Empire does hate aliens, they kind of have a tolerance for near humans and human-like aliens. Like, for example, the Chiss would be a good example.
Okay.
Though there are some other exceptions that the Empire would make. Grand Admiral Thrawn is one example, and of course,
obviously,
another example of a non-humanoid alien serving within the Imperial ranks would be good old Scar himself.
Yep.
And of course, there would be the Ugnaughts, who served as law-abiding workers within the Empire, which are the pig races.
The Ugnaughts.
The Ugnaughts.
Ugnaught.
The Ugnaughts. There we go. This human centralism was widely accepted via numerous pieces of propaganda, which basically exaggerated human involvement in the history of the galaxy, which in all honesty is not that hard of a claim to make, considering how involved humanity is in the Star Wars galaxy.
Okay.
Like, we always see in every main movie series or any video game, the main character is always human, not an alien, always human.
Unless you count SWTOR, where you can make near humans or aliens.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's that example, but the go-to example for any major figure in the galaxy is always human. Like, sure.
Revan.
Yeah, Darth Revan being one example, XR Kun being another example, Anakin Skywalker. What's another example I could throw at real quickly? Some major Mandalorian figures are humans.
Mm-hmm. Shae Vizsla. Any of the Mandalorians.
Yeah, pretty much. Even though they were originally aliens, but you give a point I'm trying to make.
Yes.
but yeah, like some other piece of propaganda is basically so there is this author who, let me see if I could find, did I not write it down here? Okay, so basically there was this imperial scientist that wrote a book basically describing many alien races and demeaning them as barely better than barbarians.
Mm-hmm.
Like you always see in real world examples of British scientists like demeaning the African populations as more primitive compared to the high and superior white man.
Yep.
Basically like
racism.
That. Yay, racism, but with aliens instead of other humans. Yay.
It's still racism.
Xenophobia. We'll stick with xenophobia. Like in that same book, it included the species of Amon Calamari and Kulumi, which have been part of a republic for centuries. In his book, he claimed that they were recently discovered by the Empire.
Okay.
As basically these lost alien races that have been out of contact with the rest of the galaxy for centuries. Basically a lot of high human superiority propaganda and all that shit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, aliens weren't the only ones that were abused, though. Droids were heavily suppressed in the Empire.
Well, not surprising. They've been suppressed for a long time.
Well, even more so under the Empire, to the point where droids aren't granted citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at all. It's so prominent that the Empire rarely uses droid labor units, as even though they're cheaper and much more efficient compared to slaves, they abhor the use of droid labor, instead using organic slaves.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of a backwards mentality, but considering the crisis that the Clone Wars has brought to the galaxy, it's kind of understandable from their point of view.
Yeah.
But let's see. Droids are so hated, even cyborgs were looked upon with disdain by citizens of the Empire.
Okay.
Which is ironic, considering that the leader of the Imperial Navy, the Imperial military is himself a cyborg.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
double standards everywhere.
Yeah, not only do they hate aliens, they also hate droids, but if you think about it, they also hate disabled people.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah. But let me see. I do want to do a quick disclaimer. This is mostly Legends. It's mostly a lot more progressive in the canon era of the Empire. But in Legends, there is a huge amount of misogyny within the Imperial military.
Well, I think that's pretty obvious. There are very few
Yeah.
female Imperial officers.
Yeah, there are not a whole lot of women serving in the Imperial military. I mean, there's like a couple of
There's a
examples.
handful, at least a handful.
Yeah, like the many examples that we have is Natashi Dalla, who is the Imperial Admiral that we talked about once or twice, and Yasain Assard, who is the the head of Imperial intelligence.
Yep.
And within the Empire, uniquely, there is this organization called the Firebird Society, which is basically a support group for women within the Empire.
Nice.
Yeah, let me go ahead and send a picture of them real quickly. There we go.
Cool.
Oh yeah, I was also recently reminded of his other female character, Juno Eclipse, who is the love interest of Starkiller from the Force Unleashed games.
Hmm.
I kind of did that disclaimer earlier because in canon, there doesn't seem to be that much of a misogyny element within the Empire, because there are plenty of examples of women and men of numerous colors and having same-sex marriages operating within the Empire.
That's surprising.
Yeah, like there is a lesbian Moff who rules over Ryloth.
Was not expecting that, but okay.
Yeah, she literally has a palace full of Twi'lek slave girls.
Damn.
I know, that's one image I want to put in your head this episode.
Okay.
But here's a couple of neat little examples of unique female characters in the Empire. There's Grand Admiral Rey Sloane, who is a very prominent figure in canon and eventually one of the founders of the First Order.
I hate the canon epaulets they have on the Grand Admiral's uniforms.
She is pretty cool though. She's actually very morally good. She's your classic reasonable authority figure because she always listens to her subordinates. We'll eventually talk about most of these characters in later episodes, but I think they're pretty cool to dive into. And then another example would be Captain Cena Ray, who is a prominent TIE fighter pilot. There we go.
Cool.
She actually kind of has a tragic backstory because she and her childhood friend joined the Empire, but her childhood friend joined the Rebel Alliance and they were kind of lovers.
Cool.
Yeah, it's kind of a sad story in all honesty. But yeah, that's just a nice little example that humans within the Empire, they could be, or at least in canon, both male and female and have different preferences of the other sex can join the Empire and not be discriminated.
That's very surprising.
Yeah. One nice little aspect about the Empire, at least.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of to throw a little bit of... Yeah. Kind of to throw a little bit of a wrench into the ideals of the Empire, Palpatine himself would comment that he never intolerated any of the other races in the galaxy, as he merely called his empire being ruled by humans as basically circumstantial. Because a lot of his inner circle, like Masameta and all that, aren't humans. They are aliens. So Palpatine, the general idea is that Palpatine, he saw human centralism as basically a tool.
He did.
Yeah. whether he was genuine about not being discriminatory to aliens is a whole can of worms within itself. But generally, Palpatine saw the human supremacists of the Empire as a mere tool to further his own goals. But there's another example I remember at the top of my head where Darth Vader was kind of surprised that the Empire was taking in slaves. And, he was a former slave, so he was kind of pissed off about that.
Yeah.
But he kind of talked to Palpatine, and Palpatine was like, oh, don't worry, Darth Vader. Those slaves were the people that served the Jedi and the Separatists. They're not everyday They're not everyday people that are abused by our power. They are people that deserved slavery. It's kind of this twisted morality issue, if that makes any sense.
It's a very twisted morality.
One of the most prominent slave races within the Empire are the Wookiees, and they helped the Jedi Order.
Yes.
So, yeah, and the Mon Calamari, who are also close allies of the Jedi, were enslaved by the Empire.
Not surprising.
Yeah, so at the same time, slavery bad, but on the other end, they are kind of enslaving people that they don't really like that much.
Well, duh. That's what the Nazis did to the Jews.
Yeah, once again, going in with the Nazism resemblance and everything.
It's not even a resemblance at this point, it's a full-on fucking mirror.
Yeah, or a parody if you want to go that far.
No, not a parody.
But
full-on mirror.
Yeah, that's fair. But going back to the good things that the Empire did, they kind of expanded their military campaigns and allowed everyday people to join its ranks it's kind of the idea that Palpatine wanted to tie the Empire with the citizens of the galaxy. Like, hey, do you want to do good for your community on some backwater planet? Join the Stormtrooper Corps. You'll explore new worlds and bring prosperity to your culture and people and have a place within our empire, that sort of thing.
Wasn't that, how Finn joined the First Order?
Yes, I believe so.
Because it's basically the same thing, right?
Well, I mean, okay, so the First Order is kind of its own thing. They basically abduct children.
Oh.
Yeah. So I don't think Finn even had a choice in the matter.
Okay, noted.
But at least under the Empire, you had a choice of joining the Imperial military.
Amazing.
Yeah. Plus, there are numerous worlds within the Outer Rim that were heavily suppressed by pirates, criminal organizations, and other sort of scum and villainy of the galaxy. And the Empire came along and basically liberated them, so they felt very obligated to serve the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's that sort of mentality. Kind of a similar thing with a trade federation, I've noticed, where it's all yeah, sure, the Trade Federation may be taxing us to the nine hells and back, but compared to when we were ruled by pirates, it's a lot better now than it was back then.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and as we mentioned in the Paleon episode, there were just a lot of people that didn't really care about the Empire's policy. They just cared about their fellow men within the Imperial Navy. That sort of camaraderie, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of answers the question why people would want to join the Empire. Because, number one, it's kind of important to contextualize that a majority of people don't realize the numerous atrocities that the Empire has made. Mm-hmm. And they brought a lot of prosperity to numerous other planets in the galaxy. I mean, why the hell would you not join them? And it's also a simple matter of I got nothing else better to do on the middle of buttfuck nowhere, which is Tatooine. Let me join the Imperial Academy. At least I'll have a
Yeah,
purpose out
that's
there.
kind of why Luke wanted to join the Imperial Academy.
Yeah, because it gets you further away from your middle buttfuck sand dune world.
Especially working on a moisture farm.
Exactly. So that sort of context is kind of important when we're talking about the Empire and why people love the Empire and always say, glory to the Empire and all that. But while we got that out of the way, I'll go ahead and briefly talk about the Imperial military because, let's be honest, it's one of the most important aspects of the Empire, and I'm not going to just. There is so much in it. I don't think I'll be able to cover all of it in this episode, but I'll provide the Cliff Notes version for everybody real quickly.
Mm-hmm.
The Imperial Navy, why do I keep saying the Navy? The Imperial military is known as one of the most formidable and the largest military force of the galaxy. Like, pretty much at its height, the Empire boasted ranks filled with tens of trillions of soldiers and trillions of flight crew.
Damn.
Yeah. The main command structure of the Imperial military is the High Command, which oversees separate organizations such as Naval Command, Army Command, and the Stormtrooper Command. So pretty much like our own military, or any other militaries within the world, which has several branches.
Yep.
And the other military organizations that are working in concert with these other branches would be the Imperial Department of Military Research, the Imperial Diplomatic Corps, the Imperial Engineering Corps, the Imperial Survey Corps, the Imperial Exploration Corps, the Imperial Surgical Corps, and the Imperial Military Police. And then, of course, we have multiple intelligence agencies because, of course, being a dictatorship, you gotta have your Secret Service and everything.
Yep.
You have Imperial Intelligence and the Imperial Security Bureau, both serving as intelligence gathering and the secret police, respectively.
Mm-hmm.
And then the main military doctrine of the Empire is what is called the Tarkin Doctrine, and it's very self-explanatory who created that doctrine.
Duh!
So basically the main idea behind the Tarkin Doctrine was ruling by fear, and basically it encouraged ambition for everybody within the Imperial military. Basically as a way of keeping competition fierce. And it's basically an idea of succeed as much as possible, and if you fail, you basically die.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a very, very common thing with a lot of antagonist forces in Star Wars, I've noticed. So basically, if you I'm sorry, Grand Moff, I got you caffeine instead of tea. Deaf. What?
Damn.
Like, there are several moments in Rebels where, okay, I know you haven't watched Rebels, but there was this one moment where Darth Vader was chasing after the Ghost crew, and he was kind of ferrying the Ghost towards a bunch of interdictors, which are Star Destroyers that have tractor beams and everything, and he's hoping to catch them within the tractor beams, but the Ghost crew gave him the slip, and instead it was Darth Vader that got caught in the tractor beam, and the Imperial Admiral that was overseeing the operation was horrified to learn that Darth Vader was caught within the tractor beam. And he talked to the operator, and he's like, it's not your fault that you failed in this operation. But Darth Vader won't know that.
Oof.
Yeah.
Like, hey, it's not your fault, but you're still fucked.
Yeah, one of the things that obviously Thrawn did not abide by, because killing somebody for failing is kind of counterproductive.
Mm-hmm. But he did it anyway, and did it to multiple people.
That is very fair. But most of the time, he didn't kill people for failing for a simple mistake.
But they mentioned that in the difference between Thrawn and Vader in Heir to the Empire is that Thrawn doesn't kill any of his subordinates just for making one little mistake.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that
Yeah.
shows how everyone in the Imperial Army, Navy, etc. had their thoughts on Vader versus Thrawn.
Yeah. Now, on paper, this was meant to encourage the largest number of military personnel to practice ruthless efficiency within the Empire. But many times out of 10, officers incapable of carrying through this ruthless efficiency would be given the highest position due to bureaucracy and political machinations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically the useless commander that got promoted instead of a more capable subordinate.
Yep.
Which ironically enough, invited a lot of corruption within the Imperial military.
Of course. I mean, there's corruption in the military, there's corruption in politics, there's corruption everywhere.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the unfortunate thing with corruption. It follows you wherever you go.
Yep.
But, fun fact, Hannah. Did you know that the stormtroopers aren't the main foot soldiers of the Imperial military?
I always thought they were.
They serve an important factor within the Imperial military, but they were basically meant to be the elite force of the Empire.
Oh.
Yeah, not quite the Spensnas. Think of them as almost like the Green Berets of the Empire.
I was gonna say like Spec Ops.
Yeah, Spec Ops, that's a better example. They're not the main trooper. I mean, you wouldn't know that compared to all the memes there are about Stormtrooper aim.
Yep.
But the main foot soldier of the Empire are basically the Imperial Army troopers, and this is what they look like.
Oh, okay, so that's where those helmets come from.
Yeah. And it's also very apparent because the Stormtrooper Corps is separate from all other branches of the Imperial military. Kind of like with the Marines and the Army being separate.
Well, Marines, Army, Navy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get
it. But, let me see. And then the main Imperial officers, which hold command over ships, troops, and other military units, they're your classical commissioned officers. They mostly come from the Corps. They're from the rich, noble families and all that.
Yay, nepotism.
Yay, nepotism, which is plenty common in the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about the Galactic Empire on the whole. We'll eventually get into the Imperial military within its own episode. But before I close this out, I'm going to attempt the hardest thing I've ever done throughout this entire series, and that's listing off the numerous stormtrooper types. Are you ready for this, Hannah?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Start a drinking game.
Yeah. I literally have a list of all the stormtrooper types. I'm not even shitting you, Hannah. All right. Let me go ahead and take a quick swig of a liquid.
Yep. Take a drink before you...
Oh, God. Okay, here we go, Hannah. We have the Aquatic Assault Stormtrooper, Artillery Stormtrooper, Assault Trooper, Beach Trooper, Cave Trooper, Coastal Defender Stormtrooper, Cold Weather Assault Stormtrooper, Crimson Stormtrooper, Crowd Control Stormtrooper, Death Trooper, Demolition Trooper, Desert Stormtrooper, Dewback Trooper, Elite Stormtrooper, EVO Stormtrooper, Field Stormtrooper, Flame Trooper, Forest Trooper, Imperial Shock Trooper, Incinerator Trooper, Kashyyyk Trooper, Magna Stormtrooper, Nova Trooper, Office Stormtrooper, Patrol Trooper, Purge Trooper, Radiation Zone Assault Trooper, Range Trooper, Recon Stormtrooper, Riot Control Stormtrooper, Riot Stormtrooper, Rocket Stormtrooper, Scout Trooper, Sea Trooper, Shadow Stormtrooper, Shield Trooper, Space Trooper, Special Commando Advanced Recon Trooper, Storm Commando, Storm Rifle, Storm Sniper, Storm Surgeon, Swamp Trooper, TK Trooper, Volcanic Environment Stormtrooper, Wet Weather Gear Stormtrooper, Wetland Assault Stormtrooper, and Zero G Assault Stormtrooper.
What the fuck?
Yeah, that is all of the types of Stormtrooper. I'm just going to make a quick slideshow for everybody, but we'll eventually talk about all of those in their own episode about the Stormtrooper Corps, because holy shit, there's a lot of them.
That was a fucking lightning round.
That was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in quick succession in this entire podcast so far.
Holy shit.
But yeah, it's a classic sci-fi thing where they need a trooper for every environment. Like, holy shit, do you need a specialized role for everything, dude?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's our episode of the Galactic Empire. Do you have any closing statements or questions, Hannah?
There are way too many goddamn stormtroopers.
You know, that is the truth of a fucking century.
Other than that, that's all I got.
Did your opinions change on the Empire? Do you like it at all, or just meh?
Kind of meh. There are a few good things about it, but there are still a lot of kind of bad things about it.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of bad things about the Galactic Empire.
Eugenics.
Yeah.
Or not eugenics, but xenophobia and racism.
Xenophobia, racism, but at least they're inclusive for all humans within the Empire, canon-wise anyway.
At least in canon.
Yeah. I actually kind of like the Empire, because even though it's unapologetically evil, there are a lot of nuances, and it makes sense in their point of view the way that they are, and why it's such a prominent force in the galaxy, because from a certain point of view, they did bring peace and prosperity to the galaxy.
For a while.
For a little while, until a motherfucking farm boy blew up their giant ball of doom. But, that is our episode of Can Mayonnaise Kill a Jedi? Or in my case, holy shit, that is a lot of stormtroopers.
That is a lot of stormtroopers.
But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't worry, Mr. Warlord Lover, we'll eventually get to your Imperial Warlords, which are all very fascinating. But, that's, greater context for the Galactic Empire, and I'm very, very happy that we covered a original trilogy faction for once.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we'll eventually get to the Rebel Alliance, because that's a whole other can of worms we'll have to explore.
Yeah.
But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and you got any closing statements, Hannah?
Nope, we'll see you in the next episode.
May the Force be with you.
This is the way.
In glory to the Empire.
For the Empire!
For the Empire! Bye-bye!
Bye!